Welcome once again to Sid Caudle Christian People's Alliance. Sid, we've got another week of outstanding misery for most people. People are, I don't know, ducking and diving and avoiding, especially Sir Keir Starmer. But before we get on to that said, gentlemen, can I go back to the real times of Margaret Thatcher? She got a flotilla down there in 48 hours to the Falkland Islands, and this man has failed again, and it's taken weeks to get that one destroyer to come over to the Mediterranean. Now, things are going on behind the scene. I recall that there are two news outlets at the time, namely The Guardian and the BBC, that came in for a bit of stick because they weren't supporting the war, they were taking a neutral position. And boy, did the Argentinians use it. And the rest of the press ganged up on them and said, don't be ridiculous, we're in a war situation. Well, The Guardian and the BBC have learnt nothing, and it's the same again in Iran. But they've been joined by other people doing the same thing. And it's the same thing in America. What is going on?
Okay, well, it is very clear to me that the left-wing media don't want Trump to succeed in the midterms that are coming up later on this year. And they're aware there's an election coming up, and Trump's very aware there's an election coming up. And they want this war to be a disaster so that Trump becomes very unpopular. And they don't really care. I mean, they're quite happy to say it's a disaster, whether it is or not. They're not committed to the truth. I mean, what they said during the Biden presidency, I mean, they were trying to make out that he was doing a wonderful job as president, even though he was blatantly doing a terrible job. Because the media aren't bothered about the truth. But nevertheless, the reality will come home to bite them at some point. And I'm perfectly convinced that the war is going far better than the left-wing media are prepared to admit.
Yes, the having a gay time over in the rest of Europe, and including Britain. They're all taking the stand against Trump. They don't need much effort to poke the lion that way. But I'll tell you something that occurs to me, which is a bit fascinating, and that's the Fabians are coming back with a vengeance. Now, they're quite extreme socialist humanists. They've even gone so far as to say that they blame the Church of England for a lot of things. We could be right, actually. But they seem to be anti-Christian, to put it short.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, the Fabians, I'm afraid, a little bit like the Freemasons and there's other organisations out there, the Illuminati, that have their agenda, which is certainly not a Christian agenda. It is quite the opposite of a Christian agenda. So anything which they think that they can bandwagon, that they can jump on, they're willing to jump on it. And by the way, you did actually ask me earlier about Starmer's failure to go to Cyprus. See, what I find very, very disturbing in all this is the fact that the Cypriot government has lost confidence in Great Britain. France, they say, got here before Great Britain, and we now want Britain to remove their bases from Cyprus. We've lost Gibraltar, apparently. The Argentinians certainly want the Falklands back, and the way things are now, they know they've got nothing whatsoever to fear from Starmer. If the Argentinians go back and take the Falklands, Starmer will say it is against international law and ask for a judgment in the International Criminal Court, no doubt, against Argentina, and that'll be about all that will happen. It'll just be a complete waste of time. Which, incidentally, I mean, when we actually did have the Falklands conflict last time, Michael Foot, the then leader of the Labour Party, was just saying, oh, we've got to go to the United Nations, got to go to the United Nations, ask the United Nations for help, which is the same thing in a different era of what Keir Starmer's saying. International Criminal Court, go there. Because the International Criminal Court only has any legitimacy at all through the United Nations. So that's what the Labour Party thinks. And they're not actually doing what they should be doing to protect the country's interests. and the interests of those who rely on us, which includes the Falklanders and includes those in Cyprus and includes certainly the Gibraltarians as well.
Well, that's interesting because the next item on the agenda was that very condition. But of course, it's not been made any better now, especially with the Chagos Islands, because they want fishing rights, Mauritius, which means China, of course. What is behind this, Sid? Now, is Starmer deliberately bringing our nation down?
Well, there was a ruling from the International Criminal Court, but the thing is, the International Criminal Court is controlled by China and a lot of communist countries. I mean, the International Criminal Court isn't controlled by the United States of America. I mean, quite the opposite. I mean, the Trump has actually sanctioned a whole load of criminal court judges and said they're not allowed to enter the United States of America because their rulings have been so extreme. But Starmer, instead of actually saying, "Oh, what the International Criminal Court is saying is advisory. I don't have to take their advice, and I'm not going to take their advice," which, frankly, any sensible leader would be saying. Keir Starmer is saying, "Oh, if the International Criminal Court rules, we have to abide by it." And bear in mind, while we're talking about this, the International Criminal Court has made a judgment that Netanyahu and Gallant must be arrested. And Starmer has said if they come to Great Britain, they'll be arrested. So that's, it's just the nonsense, and frankly, of what we're facing at the moment.
The other topic of conversation still is the Green Party in the United Kingdom following the Gorton Denton by-election. Now, the May elections are almost upon us. You're in the middle of things yourself, and it's a bit dicey at the moment, frankly, because various parties are panicking because the Greens appear to be growing in their authority and they're capturing people. Now, whether it's just a local election thing and people wouldn't vote the same way in a general election, but certainly they're grabbing votes, especially off the Labour side.
Yes, because the Greens have now positioned themselves very much to the left of of the Labour Party. And I think what you've got to understand is that traditionally the Greens were seen as a party that wanted to take care of the environment. And they've also a party that's had a lot of favour from the left-wing media, who've really promoted the Green Party to the position that they are now. Now, the Green under Zach Polanski, the Green Party has shifted from being primarily concerned about the environment to supporting Hamas and anything that's far left. And it's very interesting that in that by-election you just referred to, in not one leaflet did they talk about the environment. What they were talking about all the time was Iran and Gaza and the Labour Party's approach to international affairs. And they were attacking the Labour Party. So suddenly what they supposedly stand for no longer seems to be important. So the party has shifted greatly. And it's that shift which is troubling to you, and it's certainly troubling to me as well.
Where does Islam come in all this? Clearly it does.
Well, what Muslims aren't committed to any particular political party, but they will support whichever party they think will give them the most benefits. So, for instance, we've actually seen this in Newham, where I'm doing a lot of campaigning at the moment, where Tabligh Jamaat wanted to build a massive mosque behind West Ham Station. And the Labour Party, the Labour Council, actually turned them down with, I should say, under pressure from the Christian People's Alliance, who was actually taking the whole matter to court. But they basically, in the end of the day, they said, no, you cannot build a massive mosque behind West Ham Station. And it's against the local plan, it's against the national plan. And the whole area has now been developed with housing and whatever, and its original purpose. The Muslims were furious. And the first thing they did was to suddenly get behind the Conservative Party. Well, Newham being what it is, that didn't work. So then they set up their own independence party, which that is beginning to gain traction. And they've also been giving support to the Green Party in certain wards. And the Green Party's got some councillors elected onto Newham. So they're not committed to the Green Party. If the Green Party turns around and says, "Oh, we're not supporting you over this particular issue, which is important to them," they'll ditch the Green Party. It's but you see, they're very clever. They're very clever at moving their votes according to who's going to give them the most.
Yeah, this is the democracy we have. But there you go. In one sense, it gets worse because people are writing, and I'll read you it. It takes megatons of chutzpah or gall for the Chinese Communist Party and its diplomats to carry on as if the world doesn't know that it's responsible for assisting and enabling Iran's campaign of ballistic missiles and drones and terror attacks. Well, that's perfectly true, Sid. You can see from the bits of metal that that arrive in bomb formation or missile. You clearly see CCP printed on the missiles. Now, why doesn't the West face them down?
Well, China obviously are very powerful, and I'm reminded of what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. Biden said, "Oh, Russia's got nuclear weapons. We can't attack Russia." And actually, it was Boris Johnson that said, "Yes, we can," and gave Zelensky the encouragement to resist. Biden actually said to Zelensky when Russia invaded, "Run away," and I'll help you get out of the country. That's what he said. And famously, Zelensky replies, "I want help. I don't want a lift." Now that just shows that countries, or many countries, certainly left-wing rulers, put it like that, are afraid of Russia and China because of their military might. And I'm afraid Trump is an exception because he's not afraid of China and he's willing to take them on. But he's very much an exception.
I say take them on, Sid, and you say the same. But let's be honest, it's not the fear of their warships, especially their naval fleet, or anything else for that matter, because technology is still on the American side. But it's the fact that they could stop supplying the world with batteries, with these rare minerals, and they're using every bit of power they can.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's economic power, but that's one reason why Trump was so keen on Greenland, because Greenland's got a lot of these minerals that the world needs. So he's been so keen on Greenland and developing Greenland because that can actually, those minerals can be replaced in Greenland that at the moment we're very reliant on China for.
Thinking again on a different page, Ed Miliband, my goodness me, and Donald Trump, and friend Starmer, the trio have never thought anywhere near politically along the same lines. Trump has mentioned, of course, the famous phrase, drill, baby, drill. And he's saying to Britain, get yourself out the hole you're in and drill. And we've got all the natural resources to be absolutely self-sufficient. And he doesn't. And people are questioning now, who's in charge, really, of the Labour Party? And many are saying it's Ed Miliband. Don't forget, Keir Starmer in PNQ's actually said, well, it's not my decision, it's Ed's.
Yes, well, he was referring to specific legislation, which, the Energy Secretary has to make the decision. But the thing is, the Prime Minister can obviously tell the Energy Secretary what he or she wants the Energy Secretary to do. Margaret Thatcher would never have gone to the dispatch box and say, "Oh, I can't make a decision on that because it's my Energy Secretary's decision." I mean, she was very much in control of government and she told everyone what they had to do. And Keir Starmer is playing a game, frankly. I mean, he's trying to pretend that, oh, it's not my decision, there's nothing I can do, I'm helpless. When in reality, he is responsible. And he does this over a lot of issues. There's loads all the time. He's passing the buck. Oh, it's not my responsibility. It's somebody else's. It's the Tories' responsibility. They caused all the problems. Yeah, and he's been in power now for almost 2 years, and he's still saying everything is somebody else's fault. And frankly, it's worn very thin. And people generally in the country just don't buy it. They haven't bought it, by the way, from day one, but they certainly don't buy it now.
Indeed, they don't. 1,500 jobs lost in Inverness. Normally, that's a tragedy, but maybe we should rejoice because that was the big construction of the windmills up north there. Chinese build them very cheaply. They offered to come over and build our windmills. Jobs for the boys up there until one looks at the power of China again. The government at least have woken up and said, no, we're going to cancel this project. We're not interested because it is a real risk. Apart from the threat that's been a long time mentioned, they put chips in the windmills they supply so that they can turn them off and use it as a weapon. So at least the government's possibly got this one right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've like you. I mean, I've got major reservations over wind power. You see, you've got to look at the long situation, the long term, not just the short term. And if you look at the long term, you have to understand windmills only last 15 to 20 years and then they have to be replaced. So if you take into account all the costs of not only building but also replacing every 15 and 20 years, all of a sudden you haven't got cheap energy that they're trying to make out. Oh, it's cheap energy. I mean, Ed Miliband promised that, oh, if we get elected, we'll reduce your power bills by £300 a year across the board, because we'll be using renewables which are much cheaper. And he's found out it doesn't work. He can't reduce the bills. In fact, the bills have gone up significantly. The only thing they have done now is shifted the green levy from energy bills to general taxation. And then they said, we brought your energy bills down by £150 a year. I mean, it's just a sleight of hand, and frankly it's a joke the fact that they've done it and are claiming credit for it.
Yeah, lots of people are also saying, we're giving way to the Chinese with the mega embassy, which still goes on, even though that is perhaps a bigger danger. But we'll leave China alone for a second because we go off to more sleight of hand with even more councils getting round to supporting Labour. Let me explain. 800 councillors they want out of the way in 43 council areas across the south of England. And the ruse here is to get more city type councils, which attract the Labour vote, to take over these urban areas and country areas that are not that close to big cities. So 800 people are going to lose their jobs as councillors, and they're going to get a lot more votes this way. It's called gerrymandering.
Yes, but I think actually what's behind it is that they're trying to move us gradually towards regional government, which is what Tony Blair tried to introduce, but failed. I mean, they thought they could maybe introduce it in the northeast, and they had a ballot, a referendum in the northeast as to whether they wanted regional government. The furthest area from London, and they said decisively no. And since they'd said decisively no, obviously there was no point in trying to get other areas, but. And that was their plan. Their plan was to start with the northeast and then gradually spread it around the country. And what they're doing now in trying just to amalgamate different local governments is the first step towards moving over time to regional government. That's what the EU wants, and that's what Keir Starmer wants us to align with the EU. So, in my view, behind it, that's what's going on.
What advantage is that for the normal punter, though, Sid? Regionalising.
I would say it's a massive disadvantage because it actually takes um, local decisions further away from you, from the man in the street. Because if you've got a parish council or a district council, you can feel as though you can get to know your councillor, you can know your council operates from your local town, your local city, and you've got far more chance of actually going and talking to them and influencing it. If everything operates from a regional headquarters, I mean, I guess, you know, it's if you're in the northwest, it would be Manchester, and if you're in Yorkshire, it would be Leeds. But you might live over somewhere in Northallerton or something, right in the north of Yorkshire. But instead of having your local council in Northallerton, you're not going to have your local council in Leeds. Well, obviously, it's going to be far more remote. So I think it's a big disadvantage, and that's why people don't want it.
Nothing to do about saving money then.
Oh, no, it's not about saving money. It's an agenda. You don't save money with all these reorganisations. The reorganisations cost an enormous amount of money to implement.
Going back a little bit to what we've just said about the number of boats available to Great Britain through the Royal Navy, we're down to 13 destroyers and frigates. Now, these are essential boats to even keep our aircraft carriers able to fight. Now, I cannot understand for the life of me, Sid, how it's got this way. We're an island. We depend on the sea more than anywhere else in Europe, perhaps. And yet we've left our greatest asset to sink, literally. And I'm saying 13 ships are available. No, they're not. Half of them are in dock continually. It's a shambles. We can't only blame this present government, we can blame plenty of other governments that have just chugged along and not realised the importance of this.
Yes, I totally agree with you, but I actually think it's partly the Royal Navy's fault as well because they haven't fought their corner. And for instance, when the Royal Navy were actually asked by the Conservative government to patrol the English Channel to stop migrant boats coming across, they refused and they said, no, we're not willing to do it. So, if the government asks them to do something and they say we're not willing to do it, then that's going to lead them to them being reducing the budget. So they've actually been their own worst enemy, frankly.
Well, I've got the killer punch in all this because it's just been revealed within the naval costs 47 admirals on retirement still, apparently. Now, this reminds me of the NHS and every other government department. 47 admirals? Didn't know there were that many boats now. And we're paying most of our stuff not on hardware, but for pensions and bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, we've lost our way, haven't we? I mean, it's one of the features of state pension schemes that they're not funded. There's no fund that's behind these schemes. So people that are retired have their retirement pay paid for out of people now working. So any retired admirals will have their pay paid for out of the contributions of current members of the Royal Navy. And obviously, it's a in the long term, it's a very bad scheme. I mean, Peter Lilly did try when he was in charge of pensions, did try and begin the process of making the pensions funded, but of course it was very expensive, and it's not a political priority for a lot of voters. So it didn't actually go anywhere, but at least he made some attempt.
Yep. And another organisation similar to what we've been talking about is NS&I, who just sacked their boss. Should have been sacked last year. They knew about it then. Literally 37,500 people now deceased. Can't get the money out of the bank through obviously their relatives. It's what they say is a £460 million blunder.
premium bonds, which is obviously under national savings. I mean, they've never been a good investment because the actual return on premium bonds on average was about 2%. So they're actually paying less interest on premium bonds than they are on a lot of other savings vehicles. I mean, for instance, I'm getting on my deposit account 3.88%. So that's significantly higher than premium bonds are paying, and that's irrespective of the fact that you're entering a lottery rather than actually receiving the interest yourself. So what you actually receive may be nothing at all. But no, I don't. I don't like premium bonds.
It encourages people in the wrong way, out of greed, maybe. Is that the reason?
Well, it's, people like the excitement of having a flutter, I suppose, and then somebody wins, and it's like, oh, I got a friend of mine who's just won 50,000 on premium bonds, and it's like it's all they've done is just invest their money and they've got 50,000 back. Oh, I'm going to try. It's I guess there's a bit of excitement with it if you win, but overall, on average, it's not a good investment at all.
Is there any way, Sid, that Trump could influence the United Kingdom? He has done on various things regarding the drilling, because Ed Miliband seems to have total control about this, and nothing is going to budge. Kemi Badenoch has opened the last PMQs, saying that we've got enough oil this year with Rosebank, as we mentioned last week, and the Jackdaw oil fields. What's going to move him, or is he not going to be moved?
Well, I don't think it's his job, but I think what Trump has done has certainly forced reform and the Conservatives. Yes, but you see, he's a populist and he does speak the truth. And when he says things, people have to listen and do listen. But he's not going to change government policy. Well, he's not, sorry, I should say, he's not going to change the Labour Party's policy, but he might change the agenda when the next government comes in, which I think he has already achieved.
Yeah, we'll swing up to Canada now because, again, something's happened this last week that is appalling. The majority of MPs have now voted to pass a Liberal bill that will allow criminalisation of religious expression. Now, that means you can't quote the Bible anymore. They said that. If anybody mentions a quotation in the Bible against homosexuality and gender, in other words, a preacher saying, the Bible says, which normally is a get out of jail card free in the United Kingdom, where we've got our own problems, but in Canada, you're banged up immediately.
Yes, well, this has also just happened in Finland with the Supreme Court making a ruling that although they ruled in favour of the Christian MP on some counts, they also ruled against her on a pamphlet she put out 20 years ago, quoting the Bible's attitude to homosexuality. And frankly, this is an insult to every Christian. The result of this has to be that Christians defy the law because the law is only the law when it is just and fair and reasonable. If politicians pass a law that is unjust and immoral, then we are not bound to obey it and we should not obey it. And Christians in Canada should not obey that law. And if people are then sent to prison because they broke this law, then it's very clear in scripture that numerous people went to prison for righteousness' sake. And Jesus said, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. But we've got to have the courage to say, this law is wrong, we are not going to obey it.
Right, I've got a theological, philosophical question now. You are called the Christian People's Alliance because of your beliefs that in one sense, politics is good, but the bottom line is our relationship with God and how, as Christians, we should perhaps vote and promote that. The question is, where have all the good guys gone? It's been a year, a bad year, the last 12 months for the good guys. Dennis Prager, who is a Jew, but does a lot of good Christian stuff as well as good Jewish stuff. He fell over coming out of his shower and he's now able to do very, very little. Jordan Peterson, he's now been very poorly for 2 years. Now, these are very pro-conservative Christians, not in the party political sense, but in the theological sense. Charlie Kirk, Christian, completely wiped out. Our very own Canon Andrew White, not very well. Is Andrew and his wife both have MS. It seems the good guys are suffering a lot, Sid. Can you square that circle?
Not really. I mean, in general, you would say that young people need to rise up and take their place, and in some places they are. But obviously, that doesn't apply to Charlie Kirk, who himself was a young person. But I think Charlie Kirk was so inspirational that there will be many young people rising up to take his place. And we can't just rely on figures from the past. You know, young people have got to rise up and stand for what is right. I have to say that I do greatly commend Matthew Walsh because I think what he's done has been phenomenal, especially his survey when he went around saying, "What is a woman?" and started questioning everybody, say, "What is a woman?" And people on the left couldn't answer the question. And it became almost a joke that it's like, okay, what is woman? Can you tell me what a woman is? And people on the left were just left floundering and looking stupid, frankly. But that's greatly to the credit of Matthew Walsh. And that's somebody who has risen up, and there are others rising up to take the place of those that you've mentioned.
Okay. Trump has given Iran another 10 days. Is he bluffing?
Possibly. I mean, one thing that now appears to be clear is that Trump is preparing for a ground war. Originally, he said he wasn't going to engage in a ground war. But we've now got so many troops that have been brought over from America, another 10,000 arriving, I believe, that it's almost inevitable that he's not going to just have all these troops arriving in ships and not going to use them. So it's his intention apparently to use them. And one of the things in war that you have to do all the time is try and surprise the enemy. So you have to make announcements like, "Oh, I'm not going to make anything for another 10 days because I'm giving around 10 days more to make a decision." Where actually he's planning to invade in 3 or 4 days. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm quite certain that Trump isn't committed to the 10 days at all. He's not going to tell Iran, the invasion's going to start in 6 days' time. I mean, he's going to try and spring them with a surprise, which they did last time, frankly. I mean, when they started bombing from the air, they said Iran was unprepared. They thought it would that they wouldn't start the bombing that soon. So, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's very much wait and see scenario, isn't it, at the moment? There's a scenario going on in Downing Street in the last week when the bosses of the big supermarkets were summoned to see Rachel for her to castigate them on these price rises, etc. I've got to say, when I heard about it, first of all, what a hypocrisy this is when she's got the first line of attack, for instance, with petrol prices. The biggest slice of the cake is the government and taxes. And other countries, even Spain, have done that and cut their take or abolished it completely. But no, we got to blame big business. But big business had another side. They didn't turn up. There was only Morrison's that turned up. The rest of the group sent their second and third line. So she couldn't smack legs as much as she wanted to. This is bad government, Sid. It's not the big makers and dealers in industry that she's upsetting, even to the hilt at the moment. But people are being really affected at every level. Honestly, does she know what she's doing? Same about Sir Keir Starmer. Are they not capable of the job they're in? I've reached the conclusion they're totally incompetent.
Well, you're absolutely right. You see, Rachel Reeves' problem is that she's lost authority, and it's the same with Keir Starmer. He's also lost authority because people no longer trust him and think what he says he's going to carry out because of the 15 U-turns. So it's like if he announces, this is what I'm going to do, people say, well, maybe he'll do it, maybe he won't. They don't actually believe it. It's the same with Rachel Reeves. I mean, she makes an announcement, you say, well, who knows? She may change her mind. But they came into government thinking that they could just blame the Conservatives for everything and people would accept everything was the Conservatives' fault. I mean, they got elected on a platform of the Tories have been a disaster. I mean, we even had Angela Rayner talking about Tory scum, and and people bought it by and large. Yes, the Conservatives have been a disaster. Rishi Sunak was saying if you elect Labour, they'll put your taxes up. And now people are saying, oh, Rishi Sunak was right. Hey, what he said has actually happened. What Labour said hasn't happened. But you see, right from the word go, when she got rid of the winter fuel allowance, that wasn't in the manifesto. You see, they didn't come in and implement the manifesto. She came in and said, "Oh, I found a 20 billion black hole," which was like, no. The IFS said there wasn't a 20 billion black hole. There was any money that was required to pay off people that were on strike. They knew about. There's nothing they didn't know about. But she came in and said, "Oh, I found a 20 billion black hole. I'm going to have to get rid of the winter fuel allowance." And she's just thought everyone would blame the Conservatives. But they didn't blame the Conservatives. They blamed her for what she did. And that was the beginning of undermining the authority of the Labour Party right at the beginning of their time in office. And they've not really improved. They've just carried on in the same breath. I mean, the next breath, she's blaming the fact that we've left the European Union for the economic problems we face. I mean, or blaming the Ukraine war for the economic problems. Anything other than taking responsibility herself.
An item that is at the same stage philosophical as political. Another one. A lot of talk in Europe generally, and it's happening now in the UK. Cash versus digital. Now, in Spain in particular, we're ahead of the game here. You cannot do anything without the government knowing about it now. The cash machines are being closely monitored. Your bank accounts are closely monitored. Of course, the digital ID has been with us for years here, and it's getting a bit oppressive. And it's now going on in Britain. There's lots of small traders, particularly, now that accepted cash hitherto have decided no, it's got to go through a Visa card, a MasterCard, debit account, credit account, whatever it is, we only accept cards. Now, what are the dangers here? Well, there's certain lack of freedom, of course. But if you think back to Nigel Farage's time when he was debanked, my goodness me, does this give an opportunity for debanking? You can be tracked everywhere if this system of banning cash, that's what they want to do in Europe, and it's coming to Britain. You can be restricted at every level. Your accounts can be frozen if you deem to break a law, even though it is not a law. You're flagged up when anything goes wrong. Let's look at his bank account. What he's got in his bank account. And there are certain things that are very good about paying cash. Maybe tipping, maybe not. It's a contentious subject. But we are being controlled, Sid.
Yes. Well, you see, personally, I don't use cash at all. Um,
Must be nice being royalty.
well, it's simply because I like to have a record of all my spending. See, because from my perspective, from what I've found, if you have problems with HMRC, then the HMRC are going to claim that you've had money coming in that you haven't actually had coming in, and then want to charge you tax on it. Whereas if you've got a clear record of all your spending, which happens if you use credit and debit cards all the time, then if there is any investigation, I'm honest. I don't, I'm not hiding anything. Then I can tell them exactly what's what and prove that what I'm saying is correct because I've got the evidence. If I'm using cash, I haven't got the evidence. It's like because I've been paid in cash and then I bought something in cash, and it's like they've got to take my word for it, and they won't just take your word for it. They want evidence. So they want receipts or something, But personally, I think this is the way things are going to go inevitably. But it is a concern, like you say, this whole debanking thing. I mean, I've got three bank accounts, three current accounts, so that if I've got a problem with one account, I can just close it and then use another one. But obviously, if you've got central government sort of, giving an order to the banks, closes accounts, then I guess having more than one account is probably not going to be any use. But that side of things is a major concern. And it happened, by the way, with Gab, which is a Christian social media, which I used to use, but they've actually stopped operating in the United Kingdom simply because of the authorities in the United Kingdom were so oppressive that they couldn't function anymore. And in America, they took away all Gab's bank accounts, so they weren't allowed on their social media platform to have any donations received from the normal channels. And it's just like, phew, so they've got to go down different channels to raise money, and that's already happening, and that is a major concern. Well done, Nigel Farage, for fighting his corner and exposing what they did to him and winning the battle and getting his bank accounts back. Well done for him for fighting that corner and winning.
Yeah, indeed. The only thing that one has to say, of course, if you're a trader, especially a small trader, you're going to lose, depending on the debit and credit card, between 2 and 5% of what is paid. That's an awful lot on a small margin company. And the banks are the winners again.
Even if you're a small business, I mean, it actually makes doing your accounts much easier. Whereas if you've got a lot of cash that's all got to be going paid into the bank, and then you've got to count it all up and do your ledgers and so on and so forth, which used to happen in olden days, that whole account process was much more expensive. So there is an advantage in using machines and using credit and debit cards for small companies, as well as a disadvantage of paying maybe 2 or 3%.
Yeah, and what the banks charge, of course, for paying in is absolutely ludicrous in cash terms, whether it be coins or notes. It varies wildly. We move on, Sid, to our footy spot. And there's been a lot of stuff happening, which mirrors, of course, what is happening in the general society. Ipswich Town caught a video that Nigel had made, and they said, "Oh, it's caused much hurt and pain." Now, what were they referring to? Well, they don't like Nigel Farage. But what is this hurt and pain that is caused? But this is where we are with our companies at the moment. It's all diversity, equality, inclusivity. And all we're looking at is feelings.
Yes, but you see, it's interesting. One thing I've noticed is that people on the left love to complain, often for nothing at all, where people on the right are very slow to complain. And this was actually illustrated by somebody I was listening to, who was a student who went to his freshers' fair and made some comment about a Palestinian kiffer and saying, "Oh, that looks like a tea towel." And the person concerned phoned the police and said how they were hurt and offended by this reference. And this person was suspended from their course, whereas they'd actually received death threats and nothing was done about the death threats that they've received. But the comment about a kiffer meant that they were removed from the course. Now, you see, that is what's utterly wrong. There's too many people complain at the drop of a hat.
Yeah. And another question that is a bit of a curveball, but we'd use it. Why are there so few English football managers compared to the foreigners? My wife is completely amused when every pundit manager comes on after the game. Oh, I can't understand what he's saying. Is why are they better than us? And I'll have a caveat on this one. Are their foreign teams better than us?
Well, I think the truth is that there's more money in the Premier League than any other league in the world. So the very best managers, in on the continent, do want to come and work in the UK to earn more money. So, and also in some ways, if they're really good, to prove themselves, I guess. To prove that I can manage in the Premier League and be successful in the Premier League. If you take the most successful manager, Guardiola, I mean, he was managing in Spain, he managed in Germany, but he wanted to come and manage in the Premier League to prove he could do it in the Premier League, and he has done. And he's stayed here longer than he stayed in any other country. So yeah, it's great that we're attracting the best managers in the world.
Pity we can't understand them when they explain things at the end of the match, but we move on. And something we mentioned before about Mason Greenwood is coming, but you were first on this, Sid, months ago, and it's coming out the woodwork now. People are saying, why did really he get the sack? Nothing's been proven at all. Well, we've got our own philosophy, certainly I have. It's the Manchester United women team that have taken command in Old Trafford. In fact, Old Trafford, Manchester United has gone down the DEI route more than any other club I know. And boy, like normal companies, they suffer from DEI, go woke, go broke. Same thing happened to, and is still happening at Manchester United. Will it be rescued by a real owner, even though he's a part owner, Mr. Radcliffe, Sir Jim?
Well, he's obviously willing to speak out and he's got some guts. But yes, interesting that the official Manchester United spokesman was willing to attack Jim Ratcliffe and say he doesn't represent us, even though he owns a lot of the club. So there's a battle going on there for
Yeah.
control behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, I have no time whatsoever for woke football, frankly.
Yeah, there's a lot of it about. I tell you what, you've got no time for the following that's just been made available to us. VAR.
Oh,
75% of the fans want to scrap it immediately. 95% of the fans have said they've got real problems with it. Sid, you're practically alone liking it.
well, I think there's a place for it, but I'm not saying it's working perfectly. But I definitely think there's a place for it, and yeah, and it's going to help referees get decisions right, and you've got to get decisions right in a football match.
Let's stick to goal lines and see if the ball's gone over. I don't mind that because it's quick and obvious, and it had been here with us for years in one form or another, in actual fact. Finally, the African Cup, the nations final was won. Now it's been given to the other team. Senegal has forfeited the tournament. They're actually causing chaos at the moment and want another ruling. And this comes from the fact that they walked off the pitch 10 minutes before the end because they didn't think the
Yeah.
referee had got it right. So, oh, they finished up winning. Well, it didn't. It's been taken off them. Good decision.
No, terrible decision. Frankly, I mean, it's awful decision. You've got to go with what was going on during the game, and if they were deemed, they shouldn't have walked off. Therefore you can't come back. It's the end of the match. Sorry, you've lost the match because you've walked off. You can't say, yeah, okay, we'll allow you back. We'll resume the game. You score a goal and you win, but now we're taking the game away from you. I mean, that's just complete nonsense.
Wonder if it had VAR on the occasion.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean that may well have helped, I guess. But yeah, no, I think it's awful that after a match is over and the trophy's been handed out, that you then say now we're taking the trophy off you. That's just disaster.
Well, it's bizarre, especially when they were awarded a 3-0 win. I mean, where
Yes.
they got that from, goodness only knows.
Well, exactly.
There we go. We finish on a note of humour, Sid. And there's not much humour going around, but there's a bit of it there. Thank you so much. We'll see you
Okay.
next week.
Cheers.